Hi, this is Mike McDonald. Welcome to the Meta Device Talent YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about if it's time to look for a new job or if you're just being impulsive. The decision to look for a new job is one that can be characterized along a continuum. If you looked at that continuum, at one end would be happy, not looking for a job, and unwilling to entertain new opportunities. This is a place to be if you've just started a new job or are highly engaged. At the other end of that continuum is actively looking for new opportunities. This could be because you're desperately looking to get out of the job you're in or because you've been laid off and are unemployed. Neither end of this continuum is extremely wise. It's better to be somewhere near the middle between happy and unwilling to entertain new opportunities and open to exploring things if they're the right opportunity. In this YouTube, I'm going to talk about 4 factors that will help you determine where on that continuum your interest in making a change should reside. Those 4 factors are, number 1, your relationship with your boss. Number 2, your career plan. Number 3, your organization. And number 4, how long you've been with the company. So let's explore each one of these factors in greater detail so that you can have a framework to determine when it's time to be more actively open to making a change and when it's time to stick it out and turn off your openness to look at new opportunities and focus on what you're doing now. How's your relationship with your boss? I put this first because, quite frankly, this is the number one reason why people change jobs. If you look at career research, it's not pay, it's not better opportunity, it's not location, it's the better relationship with the boss. What I mean is people leave bad bosses and they go to better bosses. The theory isn't that people leave companies and jobs, it's that they leave bosses to go to better bosses. The person you work for should be someone who you feel like you're learning from, who supports you and helps you achieve your goals. A wise man once told me early on in my career, work to learn, not to earn. And this is really important, especially early on in your career. You want to work for people that will help you grow and develop and learn, not people that will hold you back. If your boss is someone who you admire, feel like you can learn from, and you feel like they can get you moving forward in your career, that's a good sign that you may want to stick it out. If your boss and you frankly don't get along at all, or they don't have your back, or they're a middle manager that's kind of sitting there in your way, that would be a good reason to really seriously consider making a job change. What's your career plan? The second component that you should explore when you consider if it's time to make a job change is your career plan. If you've read any of the articles I posted on LinkedIn, listened to my podcast, or checked out any of my other YouTubes, you'll know I'm a huge proponent of planning. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail, and your career is an important component of this. So take the time to write down on an annual or semi-annual basis what your career plan is. If you need help with this, I'll give you a link to a podcast I did a little while back on how to career plan. The decision when you should change jobs should be much easier when you weigh it up against a strategic career plan. How long you've been in an organization is critical. What you don't want to do is create a career where you're perceived as a job hopper. The definition of job hopping varies from industry to industry. If you're in the tech industry at the San Francisco Bay, you're probably going to move around a lot more than if you work at an old school blue chip type company that's more conservative. Each industry has its own norms for what they consider job hopping, or they don't care. However, you should know for your industry and the space you want to be in what's considered a reasonable tenure in an organization, because at the end of the day, companies want to invest in individuals who they feel like will be there in the future. Otherwise, why invest? So you need to architect your career to have stability. To me, stability means an average of 5 to 7 years at a company. If you're making changes in less than 3 years, you're likely job hopping. And if you're staying more than 10 years, you're likely retired in place and headed towards being a lifer. You don't want to be a lifer. In the past, people got a gold watch, they were celebrated, and retired with a pension from organizations. However, that is very rare. What more frequently happens in this day and age is after 15, 20, 25 years, people are greeted with a pink slip. They're let go so that organizations can hire younger, less expensive individuals. And those folks who invested 15, 20, 25 years in an organization are left now unemployed to find a job. And guess what? If you've been at the same company for more than 10 years, it becomes much harder to find a job because leaders want to hire people who they feel comfortable can adapt to new environments. And the challenge with being at a company for 15 or 20 years is that you haven't shown that you're able to adapt to new environments, and therefore you create a risk. Organizations are far more likely to hire that strategic leader who's been at 2 or 3 companies in their 20-year career than that person who's been at the same organization for 20 years. They'll see that person who's moved around as more career motivated and driven, more able to adapt to a changing environment, and a better fit for their organization. So be really careful when you're coming up on the 10-year mark or going beyond the 10-year that you don't become a lifer. It isn't a good thing for your career. The final component to look at as you determine when it's time to look for a job is the outlook for your organization. The other 3 factors could be all green light. They could be great. But if your organization's trajectory is headed into a plane crash, it's probably not a great thing to stay at your organization. That means if you do everything right, you may not get the result you want because the company simply can't do what they promised because they're not doing well. Rising tide lifts all ships. So it's really important that you align yourself strategically with an organization that's creating success and not an organization on the decline. So if you look at these 4 factors, you can have a more objective framework to determine when it's time to look for a job. The way I would use this is I would put each one of these factors in a column on a piece of paper, and I would write them down, and then I'd write down the factors impacting them to have a better, more clear picture of where things stand so that I could evaluate it and make a decision where on that continuum I want my attitude towards job seeking to be. Do I want to be highly engaged in my current role and not even willing to entertain anything? Or do I want to be pushing a lot harder to build my career? I hope you've enjoyed today's episode about when it's time to look for a job. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe to this channel, check out my podcast, or connect to me on LinkedIn. I hope you're having a great day, and thanks again for tuning in.